It's my birthday, and what I want to do today is try and plant as many of these seedlings as I possibly can. We've got a ton that are ready to be planted, some that are almost ready, and some that are a bit slow. But before we plant the seedlings, there are a couple of strawberries in this new patch that just look perfect. And I could use some breakfast. So I'm just going to raid the strawberries, and then I've got a couple of things that I want to show you that are looking pretty fantastic. The first thing I want to show you is an area you haven't seen in a while, because usually we look through from the other direction. But you can see the status along here is making an absolutely beautiful border for this alleyway. And the roses, while they're not growing as well at this end, they're still a bit of a beast and they need some taming, and they're all budded up and they're going to look absolutely sensational. Then we've got this giant center urn that we planted up together, I think 2 weeks before the end of winter. And we've got buds on the salvia. The Aquilegia that's been in here for 2 seasons is being dwarfed by the poppies. They are going for it. Even the billy buttons are trying, although they are not keeping up with the vigor of everything else. And there's only a few pansies that seem to have bloomed at this point, but it looks like the poppies are about to blow. These just look lovely, but I'm actually going to prune these off and dry them and put them into my Christmas tree dried flower collection. They're absolutely stunning. This is the most billy buttons I have ever achieved, and sorry about the wind. It is a miserable day. Oh, and I've just discovered the other Aquilegia in here. So the other columbine is in bloom, and apparently it's pink and not white like it was supposed to be, but whatever. The other thing I want to show you guys, although it would have been better about 30 seconds ago before Rafa got tangled in the camera and I tried to catch it and stepped on the hydrangea and snapped off a piece of it. I'm surprised the rest of it didn't snap in trying to save the camera. Last time we lost the camera, the pups were actually wrestling each other, and it was Rafi and Clancy again that knocked over the camera. So, and it was on a day we were digging potatoes, and we're digging potatoes again. So hopefully the camera survives the day. But anyway, the other thing I wanted to show you guys that I really probably should have shown you a couple of days ago, because it was in its prime then, are these beautiful snowball hydrangeas. They look like hydrangeas. They're a snowball viburnum bush / tree, and they'll get to be about 3 meters by 3 meters, and I cannot wait till they are big enough to hide this ugly colorbond fence. But what they're doing at the moment is scattering these beautiful petals that are like individual flowers off the bloom all over here, and it's just beautiful. But they are stunning, and I'm completely in love with them, and if we had the space and the budget, I would plant 1 million of them. The only downside is that they don't hold their blooms for very long, but then hopefully they'll have a lot of beautiful green leaves that cover all of this. But they're absolutely stunning, and we can start to see the beginnings of hydrangea blooms here, so hopefully the hydrangeas will take over as the snowballs disappear. Hello. So while these maniacs play, we are going to get to work on the garden. Even though there's a lot of green to be seen, we actually are way behind on planting spring crops. Way behind, and we're not going to have anything for summer at this rate if we keep going. We've got a volunteer squash plant of some variety. I say of some variety because I think my mum put seeds in her compost and then donated it to us. But it's quite close to the asparagus, but not close enough to the climbing arch. So one of the things I want to do is move it. I have also seen like really big squash bugs that are the color of the mulch, crawling around in the mulch. So I would like to go to the hardware store at some point and get some, I think it's called kaolin clay, which is basically just clay mixed with water, and you spray it on squash and cucumbers and things like that, and it stops the squash bugs from attacking them. But I would like to climb whatever this is up and over our beautiful archways, then we need to come over and deal with the other archway area. So as you can see, it's a bit of a mess because I just moved all the pots out of the way so I could mow, and I need to mow again. We need to plant these guys up and also just put them somewhere more functional. If you guys have watched this channel for a little while, you know that we tried some winter sweet potato in this, and we put Kennebecs in this one. It was my first time growing Kennebecs, and then we had 12 weeks of endless rain and some flooding, and most of them I think rotted. There were only about 3 or 4 that actually emerged. We've still got one surviving run down there. The rest were eaten by slugs, and it looks as though we've got one trying again through here. So I just want to dig them out and get this bed reorganized, and it's had 2 rounds of potatoes in there, so we'll put something different in there now. The bed where we planted the red Pontiacs is also looking really rough. We've just been mauled by slugs since all that rain, so I want to dig them out and just start afresh. I've got some new potatoes so that they will actually come ready at the right time, but we need to deal with that. It's also time for the mass of broad beans to come out. It's just, I'm over it. Every time we get wind, they get blown into the pathways. These ones have started having the aphid problem again, and there were so many aphids. So I sprayed them with soap the other day, and then I meant to come out and deal with them the next day and didn't. Some of them are starting to develop like weird fungally stuff on the outside of the bean, and some are developing like a weird rust type thing on the leaves as well. And to be honest, like these beans, I didn't intend to eat this many beans, but what I wanted was just a cover crop for winter that was potentially useful and that was going to add nitrogen back into the soil. So it's time to just pull them and be done with it. Depending on what we find fungus wise and aphid wise, I want to be able to try and put as much of this in the compost as possible, but it'll depend a little bit on what the state of affairs is like when we actually get in there. So we need to get in there, harvest whatever we can, get the beds ready for spring, and get our seedlings planted. And that is the plan for today. And thankfully, we have a brand new wheelbarrow to help us in the process. I tried very hard to find replacement wheels for the other one. Could not be done. So thankfully, we've got this one with a much thicker tire, and it is so much better to wheel around. So let's get on with it. I've gone round and nipped the top off all the broad beans that I can see. I would say maybe like 100% of this bed was covered in aphids, but maybe like 75% overall, which is still quite a lot. So thankfully it wasn't as bad as last time, so I think a lot of this can actually go in the compost. So I'm just going to go through now and get it all chopped up, get the beans harvested, and then I can go through the bean pods later when I'm watching TV and have a look at how many of them are salvageable. With the ones that have the rust on them, they should be fine because the pod of a broad bean is quite thick and fibrous. So it's just time to, I think, get these out and get them in the compost bin. I've thought about if I created this garden again, or if I moved houses and I wanted to create a new veggie bed, if I would do it exactly the same way. And part of me thinks that I would, because I love the Birdie's raised garden beds and I very much prefer the visual of the lower profile ones. But then the more pregnant I'm getting, and I'm nearly 6 months now, the harder I find it. And I mean, obviously, but it's not because, you know, the belly's particularly in the way or anything like that. It's just that the baby sits quite low, and so there's a lot of pressure in the low part of my stomach, and I find that squatting for long periods, while entirely doable, does increase that pressure, and it doesn't feel great. It doesn't hurt. Entirely doable, as I said. I used to be a catcher in softball, so squatting is not a difficult thing at all. But, you know, I do think there's really an argument to be made for a bed that you don't have to squat to harvest, although it would make harvesting some things a lot more tricky, because, I mean, the artichoke heads are at the moment taller than I am, and I couldn't reach them without help. But so I do think about that sort of thing, but at the moment the way I'm getting around that is for something like this, where I'm going to be here for a while, although hopefully we can make quick work of this. I'm going to use this little chair to make myself comfy. The other thing I think about with the taller Birdie's raised garden beds is I think I would have less hound interference, although my Birdie, my dog Ladybird, is inclined towards a high ground because of all the things she's been through. She likes to be in a position where she can protect herself. So I still think she'd get up into a tall Birdie's raised garden bed, but it would be a lot less. The thing I have found with dogs that's not great with the lower Birdie's raised garden beds is that you guys have probably noticed Rafa is enthusiastic for life, and when Clancy is here they do tend to rumble, but Birdie and Rafa rumble as well. Rafa has crashed into these beds a couple of times, so a few of them have dents, so they don't hold up to the impact of a crazy hound. Well, they do hold up, they get a dent. But because the rim is quite a bit lower, they do tend to sometimes crash down on that. So the protective strip that's along the bottom is super important. Ugh, heads. Hello, did you hear we were talking about you? And there was one bed that I was slow to put that on, and I'm pretty sure that that's where he sliced open his leg and needed 4 staples. So that was fun. So there is part of me that thinks the taller Birdie's raised garden beds would actually be the way I would go in the future, because they'd be more Rafa proof. But then there's an argument that Rafa would be older and hopefully more mature, although still perfectly able to rearrange the camera position. But then, you know, if you ever have any puppies or anything again in the future, I mean, I would think about that, depending on how wild your dog is when you're picking the height of the Birdie's raised garden beds. But visually, I much prefer the lower ones, and I think filling the taller ones, like filling these ones was a nightmare. Filling the taller ones would just be, oh god, it would be the worst. But I do think if I got the taller raised garden beds, what I would do is I would only do that in a situation where, unlike this house, where I would want to have a driveway access all the way down to the backyard, so that any soil that was brought in, or any compost or any whatever, could be driven all the way down the backyard, so that I didn't have to wheelbarrow it all down the side of the house like I did. And I mean, ideally you'd hire someone with a bobcat or a whatever for a day, so that they can just dump it all in the beds, because filling a bunch of tall raised garden beds, even if you use hugelkultur and old wood stumps and things like that, would be pretty hardcore. But all in all, I think the Birdie's raised garden beds have done really well. My mic pack stopped working at this point, but I remembered as I went into lunch there was something I wanted to show you guys, and that is Crispin Glover, the tree that I lovingly named Crispin Glover because that's what I call anything that goes crispy, and it's great to see he's making a comeback. we're not finding a lot of potatoes, which is not a massive surprise given there were only, I think, 3 that, maybe 4 that actually ever grew after we planted them. Purely, I think, because like this soil is quite moist still, and I think some of this must be left over from all that rain we've had, because I haven't watered this bed in months because I keep meaning to dig up the potatoes, and I know a lot of the other beds have been very, very dry. So I don't know if this particular bed for some reason holds soil a lot better, but all things considered, these Kennebecs are actually massive. They're the biggest potatoes I've ever grown. This one has a split in it, and a couple of them are very green, which I knew because I had seen them poking out, and then I'd covered them in more mulch ages ago. But I cannot get over how massive they are. So we're just gonna finish this bed. There's another one poking up here, but it's probably a bit green, but we'll check it out later. But like, seriously, I think I would actually plant Kennebecs again. I was really not thinking that way, given that it was a very poor germination. They didn't do well. I was really like against planting Kennebecs again. But I reckon if they're going to grow potatoes this big in non-ideal circumstances, then I would love to see what they would do in ideal circumstances. Way more than I thought I was going to get. So I'm going to take these inside, and I haven't actually taken the beans in yet, so I'll take everything inside. Then I'm going to put some chicken manure and blood and bone and some slow release fertilizer in here. Don't dig up the worm, bud. That's not very nice. And then we're going to put some supports in here and stop digging the poor worms. And then I think what we're going to do is plant some more sugar snap peas or snow peas. I'll have a look at what we have up on the deck, because what I've discovered is that the sugar snap peas and everything are much easier harvested from, Reffy, off you hop, from a smaller bed, because then you can easily get to both sides. Plus this has had 2 rounds of potatoes in it. Neither crop has been particularly successful, I suspect, both times because we had heavy rain that rotted out the potatoes. And either way, I just think this bed needs to have a break from potatoes, and so we're going to put some beans and things in here. Not beans, peas. We're going to put some peas in here, get the nitrogen in the bed going, and just do a little bit of crop rotation where we can. And potentially, once our tomato seedlings are bigger, they will go in here after the peas, because when you plant peas in Australia, in my experience, in springtime, they don't last very long. Often they don't even crop, they just burn out. But worst case scenario, it is a compost bin filler, and that helps us get the soil better over time. So let's get these inside, get this soil amended, and get to work on finally planting some seedlings. Oh, Birdie girl, you do love an empty bed, don't you? So I'm just digging in the manure pellets, just so certain curious people / hounds don't go digging for something that I don't want them to eat. front of the Cascadia sugar snap peas, I'm just sowing some carrots. I have no idea what type they are. This is the flower that I saved from the carrots we grew last season. Hopefully these ones will grow better because they're more acclimatized to our climate. Last year they were quite woody, which I think was a byproduct of the weird weather we had and the drenching rains, and then I'd leave it too long to water them. But there's a ton of seeds on them, so we're gonna pop them in. This is, I think, the third batch of carrots that I'm starting for this year. The first lot, I think only one has emerged because after I planted it we had a heat wave and weeks and weeks and weeks of wind, and so even when I was watering it 3 times a day I could not keep the soil moist. So hopefully this time we'll get something, because at least I'm home for the next, I think, 5 or 6 days, so at least it gives them a bit more of a chance than previously. In the center on the back side of this trellis of sugar snap peas, I'm going to plant some tall timber sunflowers. Now, the reason I'm planting these here is both because they're more than ready to go in somewhere, and because sunflowers are apparently good for removing toxins from soil, and I just thought if there's anything in there after 2 not so great rounds of potatoes, then maybe the sunflowers can take them out, and they should be able to happily grow up quickly behind the peas and get adequate amounts of sun. Whereas I don't want to put any tomatoes in here yet because I want the peas to grow up and get a crop of them going first before I put in any tomatoes, because I don't want the tomatoes to be shaded out and end up leggy. I added some cos lettuce seeds into the other bed on the back side with the sunflower seeds, and I've amended the soil here. We are both running out of daylight hours and running out of time before dinner because my best friend is going to make dinner and dessert, and we were going to have it at her house because her husband was going to be away, but he's got some awful bug, so we're going to have it here. So I need to get the kitchen a bit more hospitable. But so what I'm going to do is pop, they haven't got true leaves yet, so we're just going to see how they go. We are going to pop some tromboncino squash on this side. They've got a good root system though, and we're going to pop them on this side of the archway here. I did pop 2 on the other side a while ago. They did have true leaves, but they were quite leggy, and one has died and the other one is looking a bit rough, so we might have to start some other ones. But we'll water these in and I will mulch everything else tomorrow. But the other thing I'm going to put in over here is a zucchini plant. Now, I always put zucchini with a stake, and I'm going to put the one with 1 true leaf there because I like to stake up my zooks as they grow. It makes it easier to chop off the leaves that inevitably get powdery mildew, and I can just kind of control them and they become less of a beast, and it makes harvesting a little bit easier and pest control a little bit easier. So we've got zook here and 2 tromboncino squash, which I've never grown before, but we will see what they are. My understanding is they're basically a giant zucchini that, if left, can kind of turn into like a zucchini winter squash type situation. So we shall see. The last thing I'm going to plant in this garden today is some marigolds that were store-bought, which is not ideal, but as I've said in multiple videos, I've had an enormous amount of difficulty getting my seeds going this year. Some of it I think is because some of the seeds were old. We've also had ridiculous weather that oscillates between summer temperatures and winter temperatures, and that has meant that sometimes the seedlings are finding it's too hot or too cold or too whatever to get going, or once you plant them in they get too stressed by the temperatures or the massive wind or the endless rain. We've just had a bit of a difficult time getting things going, and marigolds are usually fairly easy to start. but for some reason they just haven't wanted to this year. Although finally the last lot of seeds I sowed have been more successful. So I'm just planting them around the zucchini because, as I said, I think earlier in the video, I found some full-on squash bugs in the garden. So marigolds are generally a nice pest deterrent. I don't know whether they do anything for squash bugs, but they generally work fairly well. And seeing we had a lot of aphids in this bed as well, hopefully they will protect the zucchini a little bit. Tomorrow I'll go to the hardware store and see if they have the kaolin clay and spray this, just green zucchini, the 2 Tromboncino zucchinis we just put in, the few squashes that have self-seeded themselves from the compost, and whatever else. But everything else I want to put in this bed, the seedlings aren't really mature enough to plant, so we will plant up the other bed now, and then we'll water everything in and we'll call it quits for the day. Even though I've charged it, the mic pack that connects to the camera has just died. So I've only got what this picks up, so hopefully that's enough audio, and hopefully we got audio from before. But we're just going to finish up with some more marigolds, and these are all cuttings of these basil plants that I took when we brought it home from the supermarket. They've subsequently grown beautiful roots, and seeing they've fallen out, we'll pop them in first. I find this to be a much more efficient way of growing basil than growing by seeds, mostly because historically I've had terrible trouble getting my basil to germinate, although up on the deck it looks like we've got beautiful germination. They're just growing very slowly, but you get a beautiful root from just popping these in a water for 2 weeks or so and popping them on the windowsill, and I've not paid any further attention to them. So it's a nice way to get your basil going early in the season if it's not warm enough for the seeds to get going. You just take a cutting, shove it in, and you're done. This is a pineapple tomato plant. If you guys watched last growing season at all, you will know that I tried desperately to grow a pineapple tomato plant, and it grew. It just got attacked by the local parrot population, and I think I only got one little one, and it was a delightful tomato, but I would like more than one. And because I was having so much trouble getting all of my seeds to start and all of my tomatoes died, I did buy that one from the shops, because I was also very surprised to see that they had a pineapple tomato. So we're going to pop that one in. All of our tomato plants and seedlings are teeny tiny and too little to plant in, so that's the way it's going to be for a little while. So I just have to be patient and wait for them, and hopefully this year we will actually get to try some of the pineapple tomatoes. That would be lovely. So that's it for today. I think that's all we're going to have time for. I just want to show you how beautiful the rose garden is looking at the moment, and I just want to say thanks so much for hanging out with us today. If you're still watching, which hopefully you are, I would really appreciate if you would subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. It helps the channel grow, and as I've said before, my goal is to get to 1,000 subscribers by the time I go on maternity leave at the end of the year, because then I will be able to start making an income from these videos at home, which would obviously help prolong my maternity leave, which would be lovely. So again, thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you can enjoy the beauty of these roses, and thanks for hanging out with me on my birthday. Thanks for watching. It's my birthday today, and what I want to do for my birthday is play with the clouds and try not to let it hit my microphone and plant